Anyway, the issue of the two-child benefit cap has created a rift in the political landscape. Sir Keir Starmer has backed the policy introduced by George Osborne.
The two-child benefit cap was introduced back in 2017, designed to be fair to the taxpayer whilst protecting the most vulnerable.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is Frank Young, Editorial Director at Civitas, and Neale Hanvey, leader of the Alba Party in the House of Commons. So I'll start with you, Frank Young. Controversial policy. So why do you back it?
Well, I support this policy because it introduces fairness to the taxpayer into the welfare system. And I think you have to recognise that this policy actually is far from controversial outside Westminster. The public overwhelmingly support this policy and capping benefits and keeping some sort of control over the welfare budget. And Keir Starmer, I think, now recognises that the sort of voters that he needs to win at the next general election support this policy by 3-1. So I think that is starting to focus minds within the Labour Party.
Frank, do you accept that whatever whether it's fair to the taxpayer or not, and whatever the principles at stake, do you accept that if this policy was scrapped, it would reduce levels of child poverty in the country?
Well, I don't accept that, actually. I think both major parties vying for government need to set out a more comprehensive poverty strategy ahead of the general election that really focuses on growing the economy, something that even the Labour Party now accept is a political priority, making sure that work always pays and is the best route out of poverty. And that means making sure that childcare is affordable, and it means making sure we have really good jobs across the country that people, particularly parents...
Neale was shaking his head vigorously at lots of that. Neale, just to bring you in here, do you not accept that, people should take responsibility for their own lives, and if they can't afford to have more than 2 children, then they should, in effect, act accordingly?
I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that assumption, but the reality is that the context in which people's lives currently exist is that this whole notion that it's unaffordable is based on the Cameron words of skivers and strivers, and pitting one person against the other, a usual neoliberal ploy to other the poor. What people want and need is a fair wage for a decent day's work, not 0 hours insecurity. The most apparent skivers, if you like, are the rich people who pocketed billions of pounds in COVID contracts, and there is no outrage over that or an attempt to recover that funding.
Neale, that's a slightly different issue, and I actually think there is outrage. If anybody feels unfairness in anywhere, if somebody has conned people and got billions of pounds, nobody likes that. But if we go back to the two-child policy, it seems even Keir Starmer now, who thought it was a terrible policy, didn't want it. The closer you get to power, and with all respect, you're nowhere near power, but the closer you get to power, you realise the public agrees with it, and you've got to think of the fairness between the taxpayer and that person getting benefit.
I hear exactly what you're saying, Esther, and I understand why the public support this, because they've been fed a narrative that these skivers who are taking this largesse, which indeed it's not, are undeserving. And that is not what the welfare state is for. What we need to do is to have people in decent jobs with decent salaries that gives them a standard of living that lifts them out of in-work poverty, and not have any need for a two-child benefit cap because people have enough money to survive on. The reason we have this is because we don't have an anti-poverty strategy, a comprehensive anti-poverty strategy. We've advanced a 5-point anti-poverty strategy in the Alba Party. We're very keen to pursue that. But government ministers, north and south of the border, are not listening to this. And the fundamental question about getting a good deal for taxpayers is that if you lift people out of poverty, then you don't have to spend money on welfare supplements because people get a decent pay in the first place.
Neale,
and that is the fundamental problem.
Neale, can I just ask you very quickly, if you can, about the political fallout from this? Obviously, the fact that the Labour Party are now saying that they're going to retain it, which has been very unpopular with large sections of the Labour Party. Do you think this will make a material difference to their ability to win seats in Scotland when the general election comes? Will this one policy make a big difference, or will it not make much difference at all?
Well, I mean, I think it should, but I don't think it will. I think if you look at the numbers that are coming in from public opinion, the public have swallowed this narrative that these Skyvers shouldn't be able to access support for their children, which is really quite a sad indictment of where we've arrived at after 15 years of Conservative government. But the reality is we need to change that conversation and help people understand that this is not about handouts. This is about entitlement, and it's fundamentally about lifting people out of in-work poverty so that they don't rely on benefits to get themselves from one
Frank, I'm sure you'd agree with that, but think you could get out of poverty in a different way? Quick answer, because I know we haven't got much time left.
Well, I think there is broad agreement
Go on, Frank.
on the need for good jobs that pay well, and not increasing the welfare budget. We will be spending almost £100 billion on universal credit by the time of the next general election but one. And that is something that I think the Labour Party are now very focused on as they approach government. Frank,
thank you very much. Neale, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. A big issue that's rumbling on in politics.